Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Mr. Rocks. This is Lesson 7. And in Lesson 7, we're going to do a whole bunch of little things. We're going to add scores and sounds, and we're going to change the timing mechanism from just frame rate to actually using a timer. So several little things, but before we get too far into it, I want to go back and really emphasize some things that I kind of messed up on Lesson 6, and rather than redo all of 6 for right now, I'm going to go back and point out a couple of things. I've redone this double for loop. I had some mistakes here. Notice I've changed my index simply I and j, and I've added an if statement here because what's going to happen is this for loop works the same way. I'm going to go through every element starting at the end of the for loop working down. I'm going to go through all of the bullets and check every bullet against, or check each bullet against every one of the elements in the enemies array. These are both starting at the high index and working back towards 0. And if these guys are not equal to null, so the enemies have to exist and the bullets have to exist for this to work, because if either one of these are null, then I throw an error. So hit test object, I want both of these to be in existence before I come in here. But if I do come in here, then if hit test object returns true, then I want to go ahead and remove the child. Now, here's the key thing. Before, in the version 6, I had the enemies and the bullets, they had different parents. And for the hit test object to work properly without throwing errors, I need to have the same parent. And so notice that the parent of the enemies and the parent of the bullets are now game area 2. The way that I got around that is that I went back to my turret class and I recast this as root as main game. So main game, remember, is my document class, and I use this root as. This is typecasting, and then I'm calling a function. I've created a function in the document class called add bullet, and add bullet's a very simple function, but I'm going to send it the parameter bullet. So this is new. Add bullet, I'm sending it a parameter bullet. Let's see what it is. If I go back to main game, I'm going to find a function in here called add bullet. And add bullet, if I can find it, is right here. And it takes in b as a parameter of type bullet, and it's going to do two things. In here, I will push it into my bullets array. Okay, so this is new. And the other thing is, when I add b, I'm going to add it to game area 2. And this is going to ensure that both my bullets and my enemies have the same parent. I think I mentioned before that when I add enemies, I add enemy add child to game area 2. So this is game area 2 add child enemy, and down here I have game area 2 add child bullet. So once they're both have the same parent, now when I do this hit test object, bullets and enemies all have the same parent, and I'm good to go. Okay. Having worked through that, hopefully that hasn't confused you too much. In any case, I'm going to go into adding some other things now. I want to go and I'm going to input a timer. And I'm going to use two timers. One to control now the enemies as they're being allowed into the screen. So to do this, I'm going to import. This is our first timer, and it turns out this is the preferred method in Flash for timing sequences. Instead of using the timeline, even though the timeline is rated at 24 frames a second, it's not, depending on how much code you have, it might not be exactly even increments, and so timers should be give you more even increments and create more smooth game flow. In any case, I've got Flash. I'm going to say Flash utilities, or util, and this is for loading in the timer, utils timer, and so I've got that guy. And the other one I want to do is I want to import a new event, and so this is going to be Flash events, and this will be a timer event. And so those are two new imports that I need to use the timer. Okay, to create the timer, I'm going to, let's see, I've already got my game area 2 made. I've got, I'm going to call this enemy timer. So this is a new variable. He's going to be e-timer. And for enemy timer, and it's going to be of type timer. And I'm going to say new timer. Now, The new timer is going to take a couple of input parameters, and the input parameters are the number of milliseconds. So if I put in, for instance, 2,000 milliseconds, that's exactly 2 seconds. So it's dividing up a second into 1,000 pieces, and then I take 2 of those, 2,000, that's going to give me 2 seconds. And then a second parameter is optional, but if I want to say, let's say 15, it's going to send exactly 15 messages. Okay? In the main function now, I would like to start the timer, so I'll say timer, whoops, I'm going to say e-timer for enemy timer, e-timer, and I simply use the command start, or the property start, so that's going to start my timer. And once he's started, then the only other thing I need to do is add an event listener for this timer, and I will say e-timer and attach to my e-timer an event listener. So very similar to what I've done before. And I'm going to go ahead and add a timer event, and I will, let's say I'm going to say e-timer tick. So every time I get a tick on this timer, I'm going to call a function called e-timer tick. Now in e-timer tick, what I will do is I'm going to set up a Boolean variable. So let me go ahead and do that up here. I'll declare the variable up here, and this is going to be of type Boolean, and it's going to be send enemy, and it will be Boolean. And I'm going to set it equal to true to start off with. And so I only want to send an enemy when that is true. So let's go ahead and create a variable here called e-timer tick, or a function rather. So we'll say public function, and it will be e-timer tick, just like I had before. And I don't have an I do have an input parameter here, I'm sorry. And let's all I'm going to do is I have to accept, just like in all my other event listeners, I have a T event, timer event, and this is going to be of same thing I have here, which is a timer event. And every time the timer ticks. Now according to this, the timer is going to tick every 2,000 milliseconds, or every 2 seconds. It's going to send off exactly 15 of these after I set start. So I start it, it's going to send off 15 timers ticks. Every time I send a tick, every 2 seconds, so it's going to take 30 seconds to go through this. And every time I come in here, I'm going to set send enemy equal to true. So whenever a send enemy is true, I'm going to send an enemy. Now the change is down here. Number of enemies, I'm going to have 2 conditions here. The number of enemies has got to be less than 10, and I want to say send enemies, or send enemy, I guess, is equal to true. As long as those 2 things are true, I'll come in here, and so what will happen now is send enemy, I'll set it equal to false inside here. So it'll be true at some point. When it comes in here, it's going to be false. And it will stay false for 2 seconds until I send the next timer tick. When I call, in 2 more seconds, I'll call the function timer tick or e-timer tick, and it will get set equal to true again. So at this point, the enemy should be coming every 2 seconds. So if I run the program at this point, looks like I've got an error, time constant, T event e-timer tick. So won't deal with that right now. I think all of this looks fine, so I'm not sure. Namespace was not found. I'm not sure what exactly is going on there. So I'll come back and, public. My bad. Another spelling error, which is the bane of my existence. Undefined property e-timer tick, and again I've spelled it incorrectly here. So in any case, once I get through all my spelling errors, things are working out now, and this guy is working fine. If I change my 2,000 milliseconds to, let's say, 1,000 milliseconds, now I'm sending a ship every second, and this is going to just work more quickly. So the bullets are coming. Now the bullets fly out of this thing as quickly as I shoot it, which makes it a pretty easy shooting game. I do want to mention, though, one of the things I did change is that you'll notice the bullets don't go to the edge of the screen anymore, and the reason is I've changed the range, and the range is set right here. And what I've done is I've got this update bullet where I've gone through and I've called this guy. That was the only line, I think, in this part of the code for lesson 6. But here I simply put an if statement. I'm saying if the bullets go outside of the bounds of the game area. This is one way to do it. I think we might change it later, but this works pretty well. So if it goes, if x is less than 100, or x is greater than 900, or y is less than 100, or y is greater than 100, then I'm going to remove the bullet and remove it not only from the stage but also remove it from the array, just like I did down here. Remove bullets from the stage and remove bullets from the array. Same thing. So I just check to see, has it gone off the bounds of the stage? If it has, get rid of it, and that works fine. Okay. Now, so we've limited the number of the time that the enemy comes, and so I'm going to do the same thing over here on the turret. And on the turret, what I'll do is something very similar. In fact, maybe I can just come over here and grab some of these things. For instance, these two guys, we're going to have to import in this other Actionscript file. I want to go ahead and put those guys in. So I'm going to import the same two guys here. I'm also going to have to put in some variables, and so I'll create a variable called let's say fire bullet, and this is also going to be of type Boolean, and I'm going to set it equal to true to begin with. And what I want to do is set it up exactly the same way, so that I'm going to set up a timer. And so I'll call this guy variable btimer, and btimer is going to be my bullet timer. He's going to be of type timer, and I will set him up as a new timer. And instead of 2000, I think I'll put 1000. And there's going to be no limit on the number of ticks this guy is going to send. I do need to start this guy, so I'll say btimer dot start, same thing I did before. So now my timer is started, and I can set this up the same way, so that I've got my Boolean variable fire bullet, and I'll come into fire turret if the parent does not equal null, and I've got add event listener mouse. I've got this guy for clicking, but I'm also going to set up btimer, and I will set up an event listener. So add event listener, and this is going to be timer event, and I'll do btimer tick. So every time this guy ticks, I'll call a function, and this function is going to be public again. And I'm going to say public function btimer tick, and btimer tick is going to fire every 1000 milliseconds. Don't return anything. I do need to have a timer event here, so I'll go ahead and make sure I use exactly the same thing I have here, timer event. And then finally, I'm going to create this in here. So now I'm just going to say I've used the variable fire bullet, so I'll set this guy every 1 second. This guy is going to be set equal to true. So fire bullet is equal to true, and now when I fire this guy, I say if parent equals null, and fire bullet equals true. Do this, and then at the end down here, I'm going to say fire bullet equals false. Okay. Again, notice I have two equal signs are asking the question, is it true, and one equal sign is assigning the value false to the Boolean variable fire turret. So that should limit the number of fires to once every second. Now I'm running out of time, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up, And what I'd like to do is go into the library and look at my game area 2. No, sorry, I want to look at game info area. And what I've done is I've created on this 2 text fields. One text field is this guy, which is a static text. If I look at properties, notice that it is static, and I've hit embedded. I put Broadway, I made it 60 point. It is left justified, and I embedded it in. This is important, and I won't talk about why right now, but click the embedded. And the same thing over here, I've got properties. The difference is this guy is not static, it's dynamic text, and I've named him score text. So when I'm writing code for this guy, he's going to be score underscore txt. And I can put the score in here. Okay, so if I were to look back at my main game, if I go back down to this part where I set up my game info area, the big change here is that after I add child, when I instantiate this guy, I want to create a new version of this guy, and I've created a function inside of this guy. So let's go in and see him. If I come in here and go to game info area and go into info, I've got game info area is the name of the class. If I look in here, I've created a one-line function right here. It receives a parameter, and all I have to do to change the score in that dynamic text field is call game info area, or the variable of this type, and call the function setScore, and I can send it a value. And to do that, I'll come back to main game, and here I'll simply say GIA for game info area, and I call the function I created setScore, and I simply pass it a parameter. I can set it when I first create this. I'll set it the parameter 0, and notice that when I'm in game info area, let's take a look at this. This refers to game info area because that's the function or the class that I'm in. And score.txt is that dynamic text field that I showed you. I named it that in the properties panel, so that's not being called out during the run of the program. That was set before the program is run. And then it has a text property, and so I'm sending it a parameter that's an integer. But notice I'm casting that guy as a string, and I'm putting that string into this text field of the object score.text inside of this, which happens to be game info area. So it's that string of how things are put together in object-oriented programming that makes this all very, very interesting. And if I have errors now, I'm not going to worry about it, but actually this looks like it's running, and I'm not incrementing the value. But all I have to do to change this value now is when I come back to main game, and every time I get a hit, all I have to do now is change that value. So I've got game index area, and if I simply change this guy, I call GIA, and I set that guy equal to whatever value I want. So what I'll do is I'll create a guy called score. I got a variable called, let's say, game score. Let's call him game score. Game score, and I'm just going to say plus equals 10, and I'm going to, instead of sending in 0 here, I'm going to send in game score. So let's go ahead and copy that, paste that guy right in here. Make sure I have game score created up here. So let's call this guy game score, and now when I run this, if I actually get a hit, what I should get is the score should be incremented. So let's see what happens. Okay, so the score is getting incremented nicely. I'm still getting a lot more bullets than I expect, so I probably have to go back and take another look at that, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going to stop there. So that's it for tonight. Bye.